biggest problem in this movement will always be one thing: the controlled opposition, the gatekeepers, and those whose intentions are not genuine. Now, some people like to spend all their time trying to figure out who's good and who's bad. I can tell you I've spent a lot of time trying to do that. And yes, I might have my theories on certain people. I might think certain ways about certain groups and have my suspicions and have my theories and ideas. But at the end of the day, you can't tell unless you really know for sure. You can have all the suspicion you want, but you don't know unless you know. And rather than trying to spend my time trying to figure it all out and taint or potentially taint people who may only seem as if they are controlled, but are actually just stupid, which sometimes does occur. Sometimes there are people who are just not that smart, and therefore they come off as if they're controlled because they're doing things that, of course, only someone who's controlled would probably do, but yet they do it. So, rather than spending my time dealing with that and jumping into the business of infighting, which is unnecessary, although constructive criticism is necessary of people, and you do need to keep somewhat of a line of what is acceptable and what is not without going into straight up gatekeeping, or without accidentally falling into a slumber where everyone's accusing everyone of anything. Trust me, I've had my moments where I've been tempted. And yes, I have called out some people behind the scenes, but I've made it a point to not go out and flat out accuse people up front. Because unless I have conclusive evidence, it's probably not the right thing to do. Now, I salute those who do call out those who are clearly controlled. And to those of you out there who do that, continue doing what you're doing. Don't stop. I'm certainly not telling you to stop. But what I'm saying is that that's not the strategy I'm going to go with. My strategy is very simple. It's very basic. If I get criticized by someone who is simply just an idiot, well, then I'll just brush them off as an idiot. But the moment I get called out by someone who I know is controlled, then a different process begins. I may not call them out right away. I may not say anything immediately, but the strategy is much different. Some people are just stupid. And you have to keep that in mind. Not everyone who's stupid is necessarily controlled. Some people are just stupid. But when someone is controlled, and you know they're too smart to make decisions as dumb as what they do, then rather than simply calling them out, at least in my case, I won't be calling them out. Unless, of course, they take the offensive. I feel that this is probably the best strategy for me to take, considering the fact that I'm in Canada. And as of late, there are an infinite number of clearly controlled opposition groups popping up just about everywhere. Now, not all of them are controlled. Like I said, some people are just stupid. But the point I'm trying to make is that I've been watching this happen in places like England, where you've had certain political parties in the past who have ousted their leaders and put in others who are most likely MI5 agents and things of that nature, or perhaps work for Hope Not Hate or Searchlight magazine. There are some very intelligent people in England who are speaking on this topic, and in other places too. This is, in my opinion, the single most important topic to discuss. Yet on the other hand, discussing it puts you in a position that is very strange, Because everyone knows what you're saying is true, but then everyone who's not controlled all of a sudden becomes scared of talking to you simply because they think that they're going to be accused too, because they presume that you're being a bit too, I don't want to say suspicious, because suspicious is a good thing. It's good to be suspicious of people who are acting like idiots. But some people jump to conclusions a bit too fast on certain people. Therefore, they isolate themselves. I would like to make it very clear that I'm not one of those fools who thinks that everyone in the movement is controlled. That is ridiculous. People who say that, we probably know what's going on with them. But people who think that no one is controlled are also idiots. In fact, they're the biggest idiots, because there's evidence of people being controlled in the past. And if there's evidence of people being controlled in the past, then of course we know that there's people being controlled now. This has been a common strategy of intelligence networks and just about anyone trying to achieve any political objectives. Throughout all of human history, there have been controlled opposition groups in order to justify the actions of the dominant core. That's how it works. The dominant core cannot justify their unnecessary aggressions unless they create the unexpected circumstances that controlled opposition groups create. Controlled opposition groups will rile up the enemy and get them all excited about fighting some fantasy, which of course doesn't exist. The whole idea is to create the fantasy in the minds of the leftists, so that the leftists believe that there is an enemy to fight, when in reality, it's just the state giving them a boogeyman. It's just the state putting a boogeyman in front of your face and saying, look, that's who you need to be afraid of. And they've gotten very sophisticated with this. The boogeyman of the past are people who are quite clearly out to lunch. But the boogeymen of today are a lot more sophisticated. They're a lot better trained. They're a lot more tempered. And sadly, some of the boogeymen didn't start off as boogeymen. Some of the boogeymen have been genuine people who maybe got bought off or who knows what. And this makes the plot even more sophisticated. When you have someone who actually understands the mindset of those on the right, but is working to sabotage it, that is the biggest enemy within. Because when you have someone who is leftist minded but has to pretend to be on the right, you end up with people that are pretty easy to spot. Most controlled opposition people are not leftists disguising as people on the right, but centrist neocons pretending to be a little bit further right than what they actually are. That way, they share the similar conservative mindset and can understand why people think a little bit further than they do, without actually having to have cognitive dissonance or conflictions in their mind. The only thing they have to do is just say, well, I'm going to pretend to be a little bit more than what I actually am, making the job a lot more simpler, a lot more smooth, I guess. And we've been seeing this all over the Western world. Controlled opposition is there to waste your time, to make sure that you run around in circles and you make sure that, or to make sure that your money goes to projects and things that are going to go nowhere or accomplish absolutely nothing. Big, massive gestures of, look at this, we did that, and look at that, we did this, which got us nowhere. The symbolism is sometimes good. The most effective controlled opposition groups always have to make it seem as if they're really accomplishing something, when in reality, nothing's getting done. The only true accomplishment that someone can make is winning over minds, or making physical differences. And physical differences do not come with force. You do not live in times where you can just muster up a group of people and say, okay, we're changing things, and you gotta step out of the way. This isn't the times of Rome. You can't just march into Rome as a general and declare yourself the leader. At least those aren't the times we live in yet. But the point I'm trying to make is that we have a battle to save Western civilization. Think of this as the battle of the save, where for one last time we must reunite Western civilization, the great empire of Rome, or at least the descendants of what exists from it, Western civilization. We have a chance to unite one last time for one last struggle. Because in the end, when all is said and done, once we obtain power and once we have control of Western civilization, the old divides will, sadly, naturally come back. We have an opportunity where the divides have been put to rest, and the divides are pretty small, which is why the enemy tries to create more divides out of thin air. Divides that are unnecessary, divides that are ridiculous, and divides that are absolutely pointless. Now, rather than simply sitting here and telling you all kinds of wonderful things and useful information, which is good, but doesn't really change much, I'd much rather give you something that you can use and you can take to spread your truth. I mean, there only is one truth, but you have your own ideas, you have your own opinions. I would hope that you had the same opinions as me, but of course that is not the world we live in. People are different. People have different ideas, different dreams, and hopefully we can merge them together. But until then, or at least probably forever, it is much better that we focus on spreading information. So what I've done is I've created a small little manual, focuses on Facebook groups, and what this manual has, or focuses on many things, but including Facebook, and what this manual has are Facebook groups, a gigantic list of groups, 323 right-wing, conservative, libertarian, truth, conspiracy, whatever kind of groups that is right-wing oriented. 323 of them. And of course, this list will continue to expand, and I hope that you help me expand it. Then I have what to do with YouTube channels, and how you can use the comment section of YouTube channels to not only influence the audience of the channels, but maybe perhaps the people making the videos themselves, but mainly the audience, because people usually don't change their minds all that easily. And I've made a list of, people who are truth-oriented and stuff. I've got 67 YouTube channels written down. And people who are truth-oriented, conservative, not all of them are necessarily truth-oriented. Some of them are borderline neocons and stuff, but that's okay, because we're trying to influence their viewers and not necessarily them. If you can influence someone, then that's great. But what it's really about is convincing their viewers. And then the final page just discusses a couple of message boards that I'm sure we're all familiar with. And yeah, that's my gift to you, I guess. I decided, rather than just shoving my ideas down your throat, it's much better that I just give you a way of sharing your own ideas. Because the only way we can break the gatekeeping is by developing strategies that people can individually take on their own and break the gatekeeping themselves. There's no point of having this weird sort of I don't know what to call it, but control on everything, where everyone just wants to follow specific certain ideas. If we want to create a free society, a truly democratic society, then we're going to have a flowing range of ideas. And yes, there will be debates amongst people who are on the right, and there's going to be differences. And there's no point of driving a wedge into these differences and deliberately creating infighting and doing exactly what the enemy wants. I've been in this movement for a very long time. You know, just kind of on the low levels, going to meetings and meeting people who are of similar mindsets, and, you know, networking with people for several years, and, you know, just making friendships and stuff. And what I've noticed is, and I've heard a lot of other people say this too, so I'm not the first person to say this, but what I've noticed is when you have people that are kind-hearted and they're genuine, they're more likely to listen to other opinions. When you have people that are cold and have evil inside their hearts, then those are almost certainly the controlled opposition, the agent provocateurs, the people trying to cause problems. There is no such thing as a good person who wants to infiltrate right-wing groups and sabotage them. Conservatism is all about conserving, and what we are trying to conserve is, of course, Western civilization. And how are we supposed to conserve it if there are people within our own ranks trying to sabotage it? There is nothing glorious about what these people do. They are not Jason Bournes and James Bonds. Most of these people can't even fight. No. These are people who are little rats. They are rodents. They are cockroaches. These are barely people at all. And they shouldn't be considered as anything significant, other than, of course, the damage that they cause. And that's something you need to keep in mind. Surround yourself with genuine, kind-hearted people. Hatred of others is the biggest giveaway that someone does not have a kind heart. And when I mean hatred, I don't mean hatred of people who violate what is not supposed to be violated. If the Bible says that certain things are bad, then certain things are bad, and we have to accept that. I'm not bigger than God, and nor are you. We have to submit to whatever God says. But the point I'm trying to make is that if people dislike other people for simply just being different in ways that are uncontrollable, then that's ridiculous. It's uncalled for. It's unwanted. And it's not strategical. It's not political. Now, of course, having a good sense of humor and making jokes about things is all great. And you should always do that. People with a kind heart tend to have a good sense of humor. And don't mistake a good sense of humor with someone being unkind. There's a big difference between someone being aggressive and condescending and someone simply just making jokes. Always keep that in mind. Now, I want to end this by essentially saying that if you'd like to get this manual, message my Facebook page, The New Nation of Canada, and I will gladly give you the manual. You can message me with a fake account, a real account, you can be anonymous, I don't care. I'm not trying to keep this information, this manual to myself, and there'll be more manuals just like it. I was going to make something a bit more comprehensive than that, but I figured it's better to just keep it as simple as I can. If you want to get more involved and do more than just grab this manual, I would ask that you message me with your age, the city you live in, what gender you are, your real gender. No jokes, please. I mean, people will make jokes, but you know. And the skills you can provide. Now, those 4 things are important because, of course, your age, it will essentially give us an idea of what kind of things we can do. Your city will, of course, tell us where you live, and, you know, obviously don't give me more details than just your city, right? Don't be messaging those kind of things over Facebook. We don't live in normal times, so don't do stuff like that. But yeah, tell me your city so that I can get an idea of, okay, we got this many people in this city, this many people in this city, maybe we can organize some sort of local groups. And it doesn't matter where in the world you live. The new nation of Canada is trying to save Canada, but in an extension trying to save the entire world. We're trying to stop globalism. And you cannot oppose globalism on simply a national scale. Globalism must be opposed on a global scale. So it doesn't matter where you live, no matter where you're from, or what you're about, you can grab this manual and put it to good use. Most of the Facebook groups are oriented in the list around Canada, the United States, England, Australia, South Africa, and many other places. And yeah, that's pretty much what it is. And with gender, that is useful because that'll give us an idea of the vibe of the groups that'll be created. If there's certain areas where it's all guys, then the makeup of what is more commonly going to happen is going to be something different than if you have some random group of girls who want to do something. I am completely opposed to the idea of throwing girls out of the movement. I believe that that is an attempt, of course, by the enemy to try and kick women out of the movement. If you have a pretty girl with a pretty face who's saying a good message, leave her alone. Let her do her thing. And don't think for one second that I'm naive. Many women have been hired by the intelligence community to subvert our movement. Don't think for one second I'm naive on this. I understand what's going on. I understand some of them aren't genuine. I know that. But what I'm saying is, don't let a few bad apples ruin the bunch. Don't let a few stupid women taint the reputation of all the women in the movement. We need women in this movement. Why? Because it's so much easier to red pill someone when a sweet little girl is telling you something that is going to rock your narrative of the world in a nice little sweet way. That's the point. If you're going to tell people a hard truth, make it happen from someone's face that is soft and pleasant. It's common sense. And of course, the last one is skill. So if you know how to make websites, you understand computers, cybersecurity, you understand pretty much anything to do with electronics, video animation, editing, music making, and that means using things on the computer to make music, or you're a musician yourself, or you write poems, or you're an artist and you draw things. No matter what you think is useful, just message me and be like, yeah, I can do this, I can do that, I can do this, and just tell me. And 100% there's something I can put you to good use to. And that's all I really want. All I want is your time and energy. All I need is your time and effort. All I'm looking for is for you to put persistence in these objectives to save Western civilization. And it starts on an individual scale because Western civilization is, ironically or unironically, consists of individuals. It's just how it works. The individuals must work together to protect the collective, and the collective must work together to protect the individuals. There are certain things in this world that are stranger than fiction, and protecting Western civilization is one of those, because on one hand it's individualistic and on the other hand it must be collective. And then on one hand, it must be collective, and on the other hand, it must be individualistic and back and forth to infinity. It's a very strange situation we're in. But I know for a fact we're going to get through it. Remember that.